When a 309-pound human missile runs a 4.7 and starts tearing apart NFL veterans on day one of training camp, it isn't just an impressive practice, it is an absolute league-wide emergency. 31 front offices are reportedly in full panic mode right now, desperately trying to figure out how a defensive tackle with Aaron Donald-level explosion somehow went completely unselected in the draft. Rival scouts inside Hallas Hall are calling this gross negligence, furiously demanding an internal investigation into how every single draft board completely missed a 9.92 RAS freak. Ryan Poles didn't just sign an undrafted free agent, he quietly stole an illegal cheat code that is currently turning Chicago's offensive line into total carnage. And if these practice reports are accurate, the rest of the NFC North is about to watch a mathematical glitch obliterate their million-dollar quarterbacks all season long. The story standard draft rooms sell fans every April is built on a precise airtight science where no stone is left unturned and no elite athlete slips through the cracks. We are conditioned to believe that hundreds of scouts, thousands of film hours, and endless algorithmic data streams make it impossible for a true generational anomaly to hide in plain sight. Yet, as the dust settles over Lake Forest and the early whistle blows on Chicago Bears training camp, an unmitigated disaster is unfolding for front offices around the rest of the National Football League. Jaden Loving, an interior defensive lineman who somehow failed to hear his name called across 7 full rounds of the NFL draft, has stepped onto the practice field and immediately rendered millions of dollars in veteran offensive line contracts obsolete. The sheer velocity with which Loving is penetrating the backfield during live scrimmage reps has turned routine practice periods into a horror film for starting guards and centers who were supposed to be coasting through late summer installation. To fully understand the seismic shift occurring inside Hallas Hall, you have to look directly at the absurd numbers that every scout in the country had sitting on their tablets for months. A 309-pound interior tackle running a 4.72 40-yard dash is not just rare, it is an athletic aberration that defies basic biomechanics. When calculated into a relative athletic score, Loving walked away with a near-perfect 9.92 out of 10, placing his raw explosion, elite initial burst, and terrifying closing speed squarely alongside the most devastating interior pass rushers in modern football history. On paper, those numbers demand a top 50 selection, a high-profile primetime draft introduction, and a guaranteed multi-million-dollar rookie contract. Instead, 31 general managers stared directly at those exact metrics, overthought the medical and positional nuance, and allowed a potential game-breaker to slide entirely off the board and straight onto the phone with Chicago general manager Ryan Poles. Now, the fallout from that silence is sending shockwaves through scouting circles across the country. Anonymous reports indicate that rival evaluators, watching tape and reading local camp reports coming out of Chicago, are privately demanding to know how their own war rooms let this happen. The tone isn't merely one of missed opportunity, it is pure, unadulterated anger as competing executives realize they handed a division rival an elite interior disruptor for the absolute bare minimum cost of an undrafted free agent contract. Scouts who attended early open practices in Hallas Hall reportedly watched in utter disbelief as Loving repeatedly triggered off the snap, with the kind of immediate lateral agility and violent low-pad balance that usually belongs to a 3-technique star earning $20 million a year. The quiet consensus forming around the league is that this was not a standard developmental project who got lucky in a few drills, but rather a catastrophic evaluation failure on a league-wide scale. This is the high-stakes controversy currently threatening to tear apart the narrative of the Bears' offseason assembly. As Ryan Poles sits back and watches his zero-risk investment systematically dismantle veteran blocking schemes before the first preseason game is even played, rival front offices are left grappling with the horrifying reality of their own negligence. Chicago did not simply add depth to a thin defensive line rotation. They inherited a raw, burning spark plug desperate to make 31 teams pay for every single pick they wasted on less explosive talent. The tension on the practice field is palpable every time Loving lines up across from a starting offensive lineman, because everyone present understands that they are witnessing something that simply shouldn't exist in modern professional football. A mathematical glitch has officially breached the system, and as Act 1 draws to a close, the rest of the league is coming to the terrifying realization that the damage has already been done. To understand how a talent this destructive could vanish from every draft board in America, you have to dissect the exact statistical blueprint that had analytical departments sweating in the weeks leading up to April. Place Jayden Loving's pro day numbers next to the elite interior pass rushers of the modern era, and the comparisons stop feeling like scout hyperbole and start looking like pure mathematical reality. At 309 pounds, his 4.72 40-yard dash, explosive vertical jump, and staggering 33 bench press reps generated a relative athletic score that put him in the top percentile of defensive tackles tested over the last 2 decades. He possesses the kind of terrifying initial trigger that allowed legendary disruptors to destroy plays before an offensive coordinator could even process the handoff. Yet, when the draft clock was running, scouts were not looking at the raw horsepower. They were over-indexing on a winding, unconventional collegiate journey that painted a picture of inconsistency rather than untapped potential. Loving's path to the National Football League was anything but smooth, characterized by a nomadic college career that generated endless noise for conservative front offices. Starting out at FCS Bethune-Cookman, he was forced to constantly prove himself against lesser competition before jumping up to Western Kentucky and finally making his way to the Atlantic Coast Conference with Wake Forest. Every single transfer forced him to learn a new defensive scheme, adapt to different coaching philosophies, and constantly battle for starting snaps against established programs. In the risk-averse world of NFL talent evaluation, 3 schools in 5 years is an immediate red flag that scares away talent evaluators who value predictable development over raw athletic traits. Scouts mistook his changing uniform for a lack of polish, failing to recognize that his sheer physical dominance was constantly adapting to step up in competition. Compounding the evaluation failure was a timely knee injury that truncated his final season at Wake Forest, effectively obscuring his true ceiling at the worst possible moment. Rather than posting inflated box score stats on national television down the stretch, Loving spent crucial winter months in rehab, working quietly behind closed doors away from the high-definition spotlight of draft season. Medical red flags, regardless of long-term severity, serve as an easy excuse for general managers looking to save their jobs with safe, conventional selections. When draft analysts glanced at his game logs, they saw limited rotational snaps and modest sack totals, entirely missing the tape where he was routinely caving in pocket depth while playing through pain. They saw a medical risk on paper, while Ryan Poles saw a wounded apex predator whose explosive baseline remained completely untouched. The irony of the entire draft process is that the very physical trait scouts flagged as a negative is precisely what makes Loving an impossible matchup inside. His sawed-off 6 feet 1 inch frame. In a league obsessed with length and wingspan, evaluators turn their noses up at a defensive tackle who lacks traditional NFL height. What those scouts fail to comprehend is that in the brutal hand-to-hand combat of the interior trenches, lower center of gravity is the ultimate unfair advantage. Loving plays with natural leverage, getting underneath the pads of towering 6 feet 4 inches and 6 feet 5 inches offensive guards before they can even establish their punch. Because he sits closer to the earth, his hips roll through contact with violent force, generating immediate knockback power that completely neutralizes an offensive lineman's attempt to anchor. In a Sinshan, combine that built-in leverage with a twitchy, instantaneous first step, and Loving becomes a human bowling ball moving at hyperspeed. The moment the ball leaves the center's hands, Loving is already through the A-gap, taking away the guard's ability to set his feet or use proper hand placement. Guarding him isn't a test of technique, it's a test of reaction time, and human nervous systems simply aren't wired to stop 309 pounds arriving at that speed. NFL evaluators mistook his height for a limitation, completely ignoring the fact that his compact density makes him virtually unblockable in one-on-one pass rush scenarios. They looked at the past 3 years of tape through a narrow, traditional lens and convinced themselves that his athletic profile was an optical illusion. Now, as Loving unleashes that raw burst against veterans in Chicago, every single general manager who passed on him is realizing that what they deemed a project is actually a fully formed weapon designed to terrorize the interior of the line. What started as whispered hype among beat writers rapidly escalated into full-blown pandemonium the moment the padded practices began at Hallas Hall. Inside the tight, violent universe of 11-on-11 team periods and isolated one-on-one trench drills, Jaden Loving has turned routine summer execution into an absolute crime scene. Position coaches usually expect undrafted free agents to take their licks early, digesting complex installation while taking second and third team beats to slowly acclimatize to NFL speed. Instead, Loving has thrown the entire offensive practice script into complete chaos, executing a level of interior violence that has left starting linemen looking around in utter bewilderment. When you isolate the tape of these trench sessions, the physical disparity between Loving's explosive execution and standard interior line play becomes painfully obvious to anyone paying attention. The hallmark of Loving's camp dominance is an ungodly quick twitch reflex off the snap that routinely catches seasoned veteran guards completely off balance. During high-intensity pass rush sets, the split second the ball is snapped, Loving is already sinking his hips, converting raw sprint velocity into pure downward force before the blocker can even establish a solid pass set. In one featured one-on-one drill that sent ripples through local media, Loving lined up directly across from a projected starting guard, executed a subtle head fake to sell an outside rush, and exploded through the B-gap with a violent swim move so fast it looked sped up on video. The offensive lineman, boasting years of starting experience and a massive contract, didn't even manage to land a two-handed punch before Loving was 4 yards deep into the backfield, standing face-to-face with a phantom quarterback. It wasn't just a loss for the defense's opposition. It was a total disarming of fundamental offensive line technique. As practice sessions progressed, the carnage only amplified when defensive coaches began dialing up intricate stunt and loop maneuvers to test Loving's processing speed and physical coordination. Standard interior defensive tackles usually struggle with stunt mechanics early in their development, often taking wide, inefficient path angles that allow interior offensive linemen to easily pass off blocks and absorb the pressure. Loving, however, bends around edge rushes with the fluid elasticity of a 240-pound outside linebacker, maintaining full speed while tightly wrapping around the defensive end's hip. During live action team reps, his ability to suddenly alter direction while driving downhill has completely fractured the communication of Chicago's interior protection slides. Guards and centers trying to pass him off in double team coverage end up colliding with one another, tangled in a mess of limbs as Loving blows through the central crease to shatter the play before it even develops. The scene on the sidelines during these dominant sequences has become impossible for coaching staff to ignore or downplay. Observers at camp have noted multiple instances where veteran offensive line coaches were forced to physically blow the whistle early, pause the entire drill, and reset reps just to restore basic order to practice. There is an unspoken rule in NFL training camps that young developmental rookies shouldn't be consistently blowing up first-team offensive scripts, yet Loving's sheer disruption has repeatedly rendered entire series worthless for offensive evaluation. When a single undrafted tackle is beating blocks so fast that the starting quarterback cannot even finish his three-step drop, the offense cannot function, leading to tense exchanges between offensive and defensive assistants on the practice field. Veteran guards have been seen visibly frustrated, demanding second attempts to save face, only for Loving to hit them with a brutal club rip combination that leaves them grabbing at air once again. What makes this practice display so alarming for opposing teams watching film is that Loving isn't relying on a single trick or lucky burst. He is pairing elite athleticism with an innate instinct for leverage and hand violence. Every rep features a relentless motor that refuses to stall out upon first contact, forcing linemen to execute perfect technique for every second of the play or risk immediate collapse of the pocket. He attacks pads with purpose, shocking the chest plates of blockers to stun their feet before using his explosive lateral quickness to slip around the edge. The narrative coming out of Lake Forest is no longer about whether an undrafted rookie can make the back end of a 53-man roster. The reality unfolding on the field is that Jayden Loving is systematically destroying every single blocker put in front of him, turning the trenches of Hallas Hall into his personal showcase and forcing everyone in attendance to accept that a star is being born in real time. The ripple effect of Jayden Loving's practice field dominance has officially crossed the threshold from local training camp buzz to a genuine crisis across executive war rooms in the NFC North and beyond. For division rivals like Green Bay, Detroit, and Minnesota, watching early footage and reading pro-day metric overlays isn't just uncomfortable, it is deeply humiliating. Front offices in Green Bay and Detroit spent valuable draft capital investing in interior defensive tackles who boast traditional high-round pedigree, yet lack even half of Loving's explosive lateral agility or 9.92 RAS raw athleticism, while rival general managers tied up tens of millions of dollars in signing bonuses and multi-year guarantees to secure steady rotational run pluggers. Chicago general manager Ryan Poles used zero draft assets, pulled off a low-risk undrafted free agent signing, and snagged a rare interior disruptor for dirt cheap. Inside rival scouting circles, the private anger is palpable, bordering on complete institutional embarrassment. Executive evaluators who pride themselves on exhaustive, multi-tiered scouting networks are now forced to explain to team owners why an interior defensive tackle running a 4.72 40-yard dash at 309 pounds slipped completely under their radar. The standard excuses, citing his multi-school transfer portal circuit from Bethune-Cookman to Western Kentucky and Wake Forest, or his late-season medical history, sound paper-thin when contrasted against the sheer tape carnage he is creating inside Hallas Hall. Rival scouts who sat in draft rooms across the league are privately admitting that their evaluation models heavily over-indexed on arbitrary red flags while completely missing the raw, untamable physical traits that actually translate to modern NFL pass rush win rates. What terrifies opposing coaching staffs the most is the strategic flexibility Loving's contract structure affords the Chicago Bears. When a team hits on a top-tier athlete through an undrafted free agent deal, they break the mathematical paradigm of roster construction. Chicago is paying absolute bottom-tier salary floor money for a player who is currently producing first-round impact during live team periods. That massive salary cap surplus frees up capital for Chicago to bolster skill positions, fortify depth elsewhere, or aggressively attack the mid-season trade market while competitor franchises are cap-strangled by mediocre, high-priced veteran contracts on their defensive interior. Loving represents an unfair advantage, a premium, high-impact position filled at virtually zero financial risk. As coaches around the NFC North huddle over high-definition practice tape and cross-reference draft profile reports, the mood in Green Bay, Detroit, and Minneapolis is turning from curiosity into genuine dread. Defensive coordinators in those buildings know that protecting pocket passers requires absolute structural integrity along the guard-center axis. If a 309-pound disruptor with 4.72 speed can routinely collapse the pocket from the inside, high-priced quarterbacks will never have time to set their back foot or hit deep routes downfield. Every offensive play caller in the division is now forced to draft contingent blocking schemes, slide protections, and double team protocols during August installation, simply to prepare for an undrafted rookie who wasn't even supposed to make an NFL roster. The fallout from this evaluation nightmare is already starting to strain front office dynamics across the league. Personnel directors are facing tough questions from head coaches who are demanding to know why their own draft boards passed over an interior freak 4, 5, or 6 times. Meanwhile, in Chicago, the front office is reaping the benefits of taking a calculated chance on raw, unadulterated traits. The narrative of the 2026 NFL draft is being rewritten in real time, not in the primetime lights of April, but through the bitter realization of 31 front offices who realize they handed a division rival an elite engine of disruption entirely for free. The panic is real, the embarrassment is undeniable, and the front office fallout from Jaden Loving's emergence is only just beginning. As the dust settles on the final weeks of summer practice, the narrative surrounding Jaden Loving has fundamentally transformed from an inspiring underdog storyline into an unavoidable roster imperative. What began as an eye-opening pro day anomaly is now etched onto the Hallas Hall whiteboards, where depth charts are continuously reorganized to reflect the undeniable reality on the practice field. Loving is no longer competing merely to secure a spot on the practice squad or earn a spot as a fringe backup on the final 53-man roster. His dominant reps throughout training camp have forced the coaching staff's hand, accelerating his rise up the internal hierarchy and embedding him directly into the main defensive line rotation. The visual of his name climbing above established veterans on the official depth chart signals a seismic shift in how Chicago intends to attack opposing offenses come week 1. For defensive coordinator Dennis Allen, inheriting an interior weapon with Loving's specific profile is an absolute dream scenario. Allen's defensive philosophy has historically relied on generating organic front four pressure without having to manufacture blitzes that compromise coverage in the secondary. In obvious passing situations, specifically high-stakes third and long scenarios, having an interior disruptor who can instantly explode through the A-gap changes the entire geometry of the field. Loving provides the ultimate chess piece for those critical moments, a 309-pound mathematical glitch whose 4.72 speed and sub-second reaction time allow him to shoot gaps before an offensive line can establish its slide protection. When Allen unleashes Loving alongside edge rushers in specialized NASCAR fronts, opposing quarterbacks will be forced to operate in collapsed pockets within 2 seconds of the snap, throwing off timing and creating lucrative turnover opportunities for Chicago's opportunistic secondary. The regular season implications for the Chicago Bears are immense. In a division stacked with high-volume passing attacks and multi-million-dollar signal callers, winning the war in the trenches is the single non-negotiable metric that separates postseason contenders from pretenders. By securing a legitimate game disruptor on an undrafted rookie deal, General Manager Ryan Poles hasn't just solved an immediate depth need. He has established an unsustainable competitive advantage in salary cap efficiency. Loving allows the Bears to field a relentless, rotating front four that remains fresh into the fourth quarter, wearing down opposing guards and centers through sheer attrition. He isn't a feel-good camp story destined to fade when the real games begin. He is an elite physical equalizer engineered to disrupt the standard flow of modern offensive football. As Chicago prepares to kick off the regular season, the rest of the league is left watching in frustration, forced to confront the harsh reality that 31 war rooms handed a division rival a star for free. The tape doesn't lie, the metrics don't lie, and the camp carnage speaks for itself. Jayden Loving's journey from a missed draft selection to an essential defensive weapon is one of the most remarkable developments in recent Bears history, and his arrival marks a dangerous new era for every quarterback forced to step onto the field against Chicago. Now, the question isn't whether Loving will make an impact, but how quickly he will record his first multi-sack performance in live NFL action. Do you think Jaden Loving will officially claim the starting interior spot by week 1, or will Dennis Allen save his explosive pass rush reps strictly for third and long packages? Drop your thoughts and predicted sack totals for Loving's rookie season in the comments below. Hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for continuous, in-depth Chicago Bears breakdown content all season long.